Hi, welcome to this episode, and this one is going to be about financial data visualization, the basics of financial data visualization. So taking some of the information we learned about time series and applying it to financial data from the stock markets. First of all, let's look back again in a bit more detail on the data that we've downloaded from yfinance. So each stock history is stored as a time series, and this is a clip from a time series of the data for Unilever from 2007. So the first thing to notice is there's a column of dates, and these go 4, 8, 9, 10, 11, 14. What's happening there? Well, you don't get market trading activity on weekends or on bank holidays. So for the 5th, 6th and 7th of May, there's no trading activity because the 7th was a bank holiday. Similarly, you'll find missing weekends all through the year and bank holidays all through the year missing. This can be important sometimes when you're plotting the data, because you'll find that you don't have a contiguous plot, you have gaps, and you have to decide whether you just skip them or whether you fill them in or whether you put nothing there but a gap in the data set. Most often you'll see continuous lines, so people just skip holidays in plots. It can become more important if you're using the data for prediction or for machine learning, where you do need to know which days are which and whether there are any gaps in the data. There's a series of columns. The symbol column simply has a repeated label for this company, which is Unilever, listed on the London stock market. Stock splits are very rare, so we don't have any of those here. Dividends, there's one paid here. They're paid usually twice a year. It varies from company to company when that is. And you get a small amount of money per share that you own in the company. So that comes from the company's annual earnings. And if they're making money, of course, you'll get a dividend. The volume column shows the volume of stock traded in shares, not in pounds or pence, but in shares. And that's on a daily basis. And there's some things you can derive from volume. In addition, we get the 4 price values here: open, high, low, and close. And in most of the examples we're going to look at, we'll only look at the closing price values, so the value at the end of each trading day. The closing price data, it can be listed GBX or GBP for pence or pounds. Most often shares are listed in pence, so GBX, and index values, so like FTSE 100 values, are listed in pounds, GBP. So it's important to understand the difference, and important to double check when you're visualizing data which one it is and to try and label it clearly. So always check that, and also check the currency. These are listed in UK pounds, GBP, GBX, but sometimes you'll get shares listed in dollars and other currencies, which depends on which trading exchange you're looking at around the world. The symbol is a categorical symbol, so there's no particular order of symbols. It's based on the trading name of the company usually. Okay, so let's look at how we load and wrangle this data. We'll go through a few slides and then we'll look at this running live. So we load the data from the All Data Newest that we downloaded most recently, and we look at the date and we convert it. And I've had a couple of issues with different formats, so I've been explicit here and used this string called the formatting string to tell Python which format the date stored in the file. And in this case, it's year, capital Y for full year, month and day with dashes in between. Some other files I've had have slashes instead of dashes. And I've had to use a slightly different format, you'll see there, to read those in successfully. Once that's done, I'm just selecting the data in the whole of the read-in file for the 4 stock types that we downloaded for 2021. So from the 1st of the 1st, 2021, up to the 31st of the 12th, 2021. And then finally, I'm extracting the symbol list. So I'm not going to rely on knowing what the list of symbols are, because the downloader may have been told different symbols. I'm just going to extract the list of all the symbols in the file, and that'll come from the 2021 data. So now we've got in this file 4 companies data sets over time, and we're going to do a 2x2 plot of these. So we're going to have 4 graphs, but in this case we're going to use the matplotlib figure environment. And that allows us to define an image size in pixels, if we're careful, for the final result. And it's a combination of 2 things. So fig size gives the figure size we're asking for in inches. And in this case, it's going to be 20 by 12 inches. And then we say how many dots per inch we want. And that allows us to define it by multiplying inches by the number of dots per inch, a total image resolution. And once you've given that fig size like that and set the DPI, Matplotlib will draw that size image for you. Now we're going to plot these 4 time series. I'll just summarize what this code is doing and we'll look at it running. So there's a plot count set to 0, so that allows us to know what the first number and subsequent numbers of plots we're doing are. And we step through the symbols one at a time. We extract just the information for each company, each symbol from the old data frame, and then we increment the count so that we keep a count of which of the subplots we're looking at. The subplots are numbered 1, 2, 3, and 4. By giving it the number 2 and the number 2, that gives us a 2 by 2 grid, and so it'll plot across 1, 2, 3, 4 across that grid. Once we've done that, we pass it in the closing data only, so we give it the date series from the dataset and the closing price from the dataset for the current symbol, which is, for the first one, I think ULE. Then we also extract a mean from this, so we take a mean value from all of the prices for this one company, and once we've done that, we have we stretch that mean value out to have one mean value for every point in the symbol data, for every date we've got, and then we plot the symbol data and the mean on the graph, and that gives us a horizontal straight line at the mean value of the time sequence that we've chosen. Again, we'll show you this running in a second. And we give it a title and we show the plot. And what we get out of that is these 4 plots of the data. But rather than talk about those, I'll show you the code and how it works. So let's go to Jupyter. So in the first cell, we set up this, which is the paths that we're going to use and the modules, the libraries we're going to use. Just check they're all there. They are. We're going to load the data and wrangle it a little bit in the next cell. Okay, so we've made a small change that we've set the incoming path to be the current directory, just because that's where we stored the data from yfinance. We then load in the data from the correct folder, and we convert the dates to be in the correct format, or we at least tell Python the right format to read the dates in to put into the data frame. Then we select just the data from 2021, and that's what we need to run with. We pull out the symbol list from the data, so we just take the symbol column. We don't want every single one because they're repeated, but we get the unique ones. So we put ULE, SPT, ULVR, and Orgum, the 4 companies that we read in the previous episode. And now we're going to do the plots. So we'll set up first for plotting. I'm going to tell matplotlib here that we need a figure of 1600 by 960, and we're going to do a 2 by 2 grid of plots. And then I'll feed in the code. Click run. Okay, and you will see that JupyterLib in its wisdom has drawn these quite small, but the 4 graphs are there and you can check it if you run it yourself on the desktop. And we've got this mean line set through them that we asked for as well, that we calculated and set in the data. So the one thing here is if we uncomment the plot.ylim line, then we'll do a 0 based on the y-axis. And this gives us a much more realistic comparison between the 4 companies of the amount of change relative to their share price. So previously we scaled it to the change of the range of the change in share price, and here we've not done that. Okay, so that's the code running. If I switch back now to PowerPoint, here's that plot in PowerPoint, and you can see from this the slightly better plot you'll get out if you run it not in Jupyter Labs. But here's the problem. So it looks like there's some relatively large changes in each of these different stocks, and those changes are not really comparable to the share price. You'll see some of these share prices are 170, some of them are 4,000. So that's why I put in the y limit of 0, so all of the axes start at 0. And you can see from that probably the biggest change in share price relative to the total is ULE this year. And that was the point at which an American company wanted to take them over. And their share price shot up overnight. It was quite astonishing. You may have made or lost money in your investment. It depends when you bought. If you bought before this point in ULE, you're okay. You've made some money, assuming that that this purchase goes ahead. I think they'll then buy all the shares and give you your money back, and the company will go private again. If you invest in Unilever, the share price has dropped a fair bit since January, and you're now below the mean for the year to date. So lots of things there to think about. But these are basic plots of time series data for financial data coming from the London Stock Exchange for these British companies, listed British companies in the public domain. Well, thank you for now, and I'll be back with another episode, and we'll look at a bit more detail on one type of analytics you can do on share price data.